Today I am building a model paint stand out of some scrap pallet wood. Hey guys, how's it going? My brother-in-law has gotten into building Warhammer miniatures recently, and he asked me if I could put together a paint stand for him. Figured that would be easy enough on the tight schedule I had at the time, so I said sure. He had a section in the shelf portion of his desk that he was already using for the paint storage, so I designed the stand based on that space, about 6 by 7 by 22 inches or 150 by 175 by 550 millimeters, roughly. I originally designed it to have a catch-all tray built into the side, which I then changed my mind and was going to do separately, but to save time I ended up nixing the tray entirely. To start on the stand, I pulled down my bin of scrap pallet wood left over from my last attempt at a butcher block countertop. If you missed that video, you can check that out up here. I figured that all the offcuts were still a decent size, that in theory I could make something out of them. Turns out I was right. I dig through the bin and pull out a bunch of them that are minimum 16-inch long until I have at least enough to do the 4 separate levels. Once I have more than enough, I run them all through the thickness planer to make them all a consistent thickness, offsetting them as they run through, using a sacrificial piece as the first and last pieces to prevent planer snipe, if any. With the planing done, it's time for the first glue up. I count out what pieces are going into which layer, and make sure that they have all of the pieces that will fit into the 2-foot clamps that I have. Then I rotate all of the pieces 90 degrees and apply the glue to the top side, repeating the process with each layer. This way I can use less clamps to do the same amount of work. I just have to make sure that I'm not gluing all of the separate layers into one piece, which I'm happy to say I didn't. The next day I pulled the layers out of clamps, clean off some of the dried glue squeeze out with a scraper, and run the layers through the planer again to clean them up the rest of the way. Then I head over to the table saw, clean up one side of the panel, and cut the other side to final width. With that done, it's time for glue up round 2. Again, the next day I pull the stand out of the clamps and clean up the glue squeeze out with a chisel, at least on the front side, scraper, table saw, mini block plane, and miter saw. Now that I have the stand cleaned up and finalized size-wise, I move on to sanding and breaking all of the edges with the mini block plane. At this point I could stop and it would be perfectly fine as a stand. Well, relatively fine as a stand. We have a spice rack that has a similar layout, and I find that I keep knocking over spice jars, taking one from the back. Note to self, make a new spice rack. Each level is going to have 10 pockets drilled out for the paint pots to sit in. I start off marking the center along each level and set the dividers to 7/8 of an inch for the first pocket and use 1.5 inches for the rest of the remaining pockets. I use the dividers to push a slight indent into the wood and follow along with a center punch to make a bigger indent into the wood. Since all of the holes now are more or less permanently marked out, it'll be easiest to get rid of the pencil marks now, which I do with a little more sanding, and head over to the drill press. I chuck up my 35mm Forstner bit and drill out all of the pockets just to the depth of the Forstner bit head, which worked out well enough. A little bit more sanding to clean up the surface, but I wasn't too sure how to sand the inside of the pockets. I tried cutting off a chunk of sanding pad and chucking it up into my drill, but that only worked for about 1.5 holes. Then I remembered that I had a rotary tool with a few different small sanding options, so I set up one of my little sanding drums and chucked it into my drill. I figured the drill would be running a little slower and be a little bit easier to control, and battery powered, and quieter. The sanding drum worked well for the sides of the pockets. I wasn't too worried about the bottoms, since I still have a polyurethane finish that I'm going to apply, so I figured that everything should smooth out. That being said, it's time for finish. I go with this stain and polyurethane in one since I had it on hand. Took a little bit of work to get it in the entire pocket, but through the 3 coats applied, it covered everything pretty good. And with that, this project is done. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. For some wood that would have just been thrown into the fire pit otherwise, it cleaned up pretty good. My brother-in-law seems to be happy with it, as well as he's built and painted another several $100 worth of miniatures. Keeps using all of my CA glue. And with that, I'm going to call it a video. Thank you all for watching, and if you like what I'm doing here, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more. If you have any questions or comments, I look forward to reading them in the comment section below. And if you want to see more up-to-date projects, you can always follow me on Instagram at John the Schreiner. I'm a lot more active over there, and I am usually doing about daily updates, so you can shoot me a message over there. Otherwise, I will see you here in the next video, and not that one. Have a good one.